Chair, if you want to start recording.
You are being recorded.
Great, thank you. Good evening. I call this meeting of the Town of Thompson Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It is our regular meeting on Monday, January 25th, 2021. It is 7:01 p.m. and we are meeting via Zoom. We will begin with a roll call. Mr. Hill.
Alvin Hill, present.
Mr. Santos.
Brian Santos, present.
Ms. Chattel.
Chattel, present.
Mr. Lenke.
John B. Lenke, present.
Mr. Poplowski.
Dave Poplowski, present.
Mr. Rice.
John Rice, present.
Ms. Langlois.
Charlene Langlois, present.
And Joseph Perotti Brown is present. I don't think I've missed anyone. So we will seat Mr. Hill for Ms. DeRogers, Mr. Poplowski for Mr. Krogel, and Mr. Santos for Mr. Nelson. Item 2, public.
Randy's coming in.
Okay, great. I didn't, and luckily I didn't seat anyone for him. Love it when things work out like that. Great. And Mr. Blackmer, hello.
Present.
Blackmer is present. Item 2, public hearing. There is none. Item 3, discuss public hearing and possible action. None. Item 4, approve minutes, December 28th, 2020, Planning and Zoning Commission. So I'm going to, like Mr. Lenke and some others have mentioned, I didn't receive my physical packet, and in reviewing my email, I believe I got the agenda twice and did not get the December minutes. I am sure they are posted online, but I have not reviewed them. I realized it too late.
Yep, I can actually.
To review them. So I will be abstaining if anyone would like to make a motion that has reviewed the minutes. Otherwise, we could table this approval until next month's meeting.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Lenke.
Mr. Krogel just stepped in.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Mr. Krogel is present at 7:04. And I believe I seated Mr. Poplowski for Mr. Krogel. Mr. Poplowski is now seated for Mr. Werge.
Thank you. One more, may I ask for you to repeat what you just said? Because I had to run to the door to let him in. I apologize for that.
I was, in the interest of full disclosure, indicating that I had not reviewed the minutes of December's meeting. And certainly if I am alone in that, I entertain, if, like I said, if I am alone in that, I will certainly abstain in any vote to approve. But I was just saying I hadn't received the physical copy, nor did I was late in reviewing my email. And I think I had 2 copies of the agenda and none of the minutes, and didn't go check them online. So that is my failing there.
Okay. I was just I read it completely, but I concur with you that I think we should table it because for that reason. So I will make the motion to table the minutes of the meeting.
Okay, the motion has been made to table the approval to next month's meeting. Is there a second for that motion?
Mike Krogel seconds it.
Mr. Krogel seconds. Okay, discussion on the motion. I will begin by discussing, if I am the only one, then I think it would be appropriate to approve the minutes if the commission, if the other commissioners have reviewed the minutes I think it would be fully appropriate to approve them tonight. And I certainly didn't mean to
No, you did appropriate.
encroach anyone's ability to do that.
Well, just get a Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, it's Mr. Lenke.
I would suggest that you get a consensus on the people that are here tonight, if they did read it, and then we can take that motion away, and I would make a motion, because like I said, I read the minutes. You know, I still like the hard copy stuff because you can make your little quirks on it, but I would suggest that you do a consensus.
Yeah, of course. So as discussion on the motion is open, I certainly encourage other commissioners to weigh in on their comfort with approving tonight or not.
You got no, then it goes.
I was abstaining anyways. I wasn't there, but I did see him in the emails at some point.
Oh, great. So it was just me then.
Yeah, I was as well abstaining. I wasn't present either, so.
So if other members, go ahead. Charlie.
I got the email and I read them, but I hope I'm not the only one. I'd make a motion or I'd vote in favor of it, but somebody else read them and found a fault with it. I hope they speak up because my memory's getting like a leaky pail.
Great. So it does sound like there were, and Charlene, I'm sorry, Ms. Langlois, you were going to speak.
Well, I got 2 packets in the mail, but one was planning and zoning, all the things that we had to go over with Donna and Cindy. And then I got the small packet, but I didn't get, and then I got a link for the meeting and then something about Paul Hopkins, and that's it. I didn't get any of the packet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In my email or in person, so I'll pass.
Mr. Chairman, I think we better go with the motion that I made and Mr. Krugel's so everybody, when we do get the packet, finally, we can review it better. And then we won't have any, like Mr. Blackmer said, that we won't have any discrepancies later down the road.
Any further discussion on, sorry,
Joe,
Mr. Rice.
No, John Rice. Just to cover Gloria, I did get the package, that had the meeting agenda and everything else that was in it. I mean, I just waited for the last minute because I thought I'd get the package today, but I just printed out 21 pages of that whole packet. So it was online.
Yeah, it was online, but you didn't get physical package, right?
Right.
Okay,
Great.
I concur with that.
I mean, certainly I apologize. I must have just missed it, and I apologize for that. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, a yes vote will table the approval of the December minutes till our February meeting. A no will leave it on tonight's agenda for action. Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hill, yes.
Mr. Santos.
Brian Santos, yes.
Ms. Chattel.
No.
Mr. Lenke.
Yes.
Mr. Krogel.
Yes.
Mr. Popowski.
Dave Paplowski, yes.
Ms. Langlois.
Charlene Langlois, yes.
Mr. Rice.
John Rice, yes.
Mr. Blackmer.
Randy Blackmer, yes.
Joseph Perotti Brown, yes. So it was a unanimous vote to table the approval of minutes of the December meeting till next month. Item 5, applications, none. Item 6, applications received after agenda posted.
None.
None. Thank you, Cindy. Item 7, citizens' comments. This time, if anyone, any of the citizens wish to be recognized and you are able to put your name and address in the chat function, we will recognize you in the order that we receive them. If you're not, you can certainly unmute yourself and request to be recognized. I'm
Move
seeing
on.
none and hearing none at this time. We'll move on. Item 8, reports of officers and staff. Item 8A, discussion of update to subdivision regulations and development of an affordable housing plan / DOH grant.
Hi. So I had just a handful, I think only 5 or 6 of the commissioners replied in the doodle poll to pick a date. Having said that, the narrow favorite was this Thursday. So Gloria will need to post an agenda for a special meeting of a subcommittee to review subdivision regulations, and we will start that at 7. I don't have the doodle poll open in front of me. Off the top of my head, I believe that's both John's replied, Randy, Dave Poplawski, and I believe Alvin gave me a verbal. So that's 5. Now, there are some folks here, I think, who were not, I think Christine might be the only person who wasn't actually at the last meeting. Oh, no, Christine and Brian. So I don't know if you guys were planning on being a part of that subcommittee. I expect we can just say that it is the membership so that people can attend, as we did with the rewrite of the zoning regs. Alvin has given me comments via email, and he dropped off a packet today where he found some contradictions. I had sent out an annotated copy of the existing subdivision regulations with my initial observations. I haven't done anything else to it in the meantime, but I figure that's at least a place that we can start. The affordable housing plan this Friday will be the unsealing of any proposals that were received under the RFP that was posted after the first selectmen's meeting in January. I haven't checked in with Marie. I don't know if we've received any or not, but that working group or subcommittee, however we decide to designate it, won't start work until March. So it's going to be subdivisions alone for the next month and a half, and then both of them through the end of the fiscal year in June, I figure. So just as a rough. And if anybody has anything they want to, toss out now about the subdivision revisions, by all means, but I expect we'll do that discussion in earnest starting on Thursday evening.
There are a couple of questions. Am
Yes,
I
ma'am.
supposed to be involved in this too?
You may be as involved as you like.
Okay.
I mean, if the evening meetings are, a burden, which I would understand, you are paid by the hour. We can always discuss stuff at the office as well. If you want to be a part of the group discussion, of course you are welcome to be a part of them.
Okay, and the second question, on the subcommittee meetings, are you going to be inviting the public into those subcommittee meetings? Because I know that there was a couple of people I talked to, that are in the professional field, and they're interested in weighing in on some of the issues. So are they invited to the meetings?
Well, they'll be posted as public meetings. If there
Okay.
are people who have specific desire to join, and you let me know who those people are, I'm happy to forward agendas. There were some of the local engineering firms that we see subdivision applications from that I was going to invite anyway,
Okay.
at least for comment, whether they attended or not, because they are the ones who use them and therefore may notice in ways that we don't, where things are inefficient.
Okay.
Gary, can you send me the invite for that? I'm like 50-50 that I can do it this Thursday. But or is it posted
Yeah,
online?
Well, the agenda hasn't been posted yet because I hadn't established until today that was going to be
Okay.
the date. I was waiting to give everybody time to weigh in. But yeah, I'll send you a link tomorrow.
Okay, thanks.
I'll create the meeting link tomorrow and send it to everybody on the commission.
Yep.
And then Gloria and I will just work up a quick agenda to be posted. So it'll all be, according to spec.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tara. Thank you, Cindy, for those questions. So without objection,
Mr. Chairman, can I?
Mr. Rice.
Is that the revisions of the subdivisions now? I think wasn't a driving force to hurry up and get it done because we had a conflict with the zoning regs that we passed. Why can't we?
Yes, there are some identified conflicts.
Yeah, so why can't we just address those? There can't be too many of them. And then when we're able to sit down and go over these as a subcommittee, face to face, and go line item to item, which is currently in the subdivision regs, and decide. I think, again, we're just pushing this too fast. And I don't know what the rush is to do that. If the rush is if there's a conflict between what we passed in zoning and subdivision, let's correct that. That would be a priority. But I can't see the other part of hurrying up to pass all of this.
Yeah, no, and thank you, John. Go ahead, Tara.
Well, I was just going to say, and then I was going to defer to you anyway, Joe. I think at the very least, we should, at this first subcommittee meeting on Thursday, identify anything we can that is pressing, because some of the conflicts are pressing and some of them are probably not, and prioritize those. In terms of process and whether they're live or online or whatever, that is up to this commission. I don't think there is any benefit to waiting to tackle this, since we just adopted a very complex book of regulations. But, this is the body that makes those decisions. And that was where I was going to defer to you, Chairman Joe.
Yeah, and I think I appreciate you raising the point, John. I think we did last month talk a little bit about this. I am of the mind that I would say that I think starting a process doesn't mean we're hurrying up the process. I think it, in fact, then gives us more time to do it methodically and get things out, sooner, but without the feeling that they're rushed. I think starting the process, to Tira's point, starting on Thursday and identifying the areas of most pressing concern is prudent, but I don't think that prevents us from beginning the entire process.
Again, if I may, Joe, is that, if you look at our current regulations, even going back to the zoning, any amendment change or zone change, which can be by petition of Joe Henry on the street or any subcommittee which we developed, and that process then is taken to the full commission, and then it have a public hearing, and all the things that's in that regulation that I stipulated before that we didn't follow, and that's why we're for that COPD is into March sometime. I think that's just basically we're going to be in the same place. I would prefer that if the subcommittee sat down and we went through this stuff and then we publish it, or have a public hearing to get the input from the public. I don't think the public is involved enough with this. You look at zoning or even the meetings that we had, how many people on planning and zoning was consistently at these meetings? 3 or 4 out of the 13. So I don't think there's a good representation of the commission at these meetings.
Huh?
Yeah, John,
I would disagree with your characterization in terms of the percentage of commissioners who participated. There certainly were always at least 5 or 6
7 or
which
8.
is your quorum.
Mm,
Yeah, well, I'm being conservative there, John. I'm saying 5 or 6 at a minimum, because that's your quorum. And there were a fair number of folks who are here tonight who were at virtually every one of those. I would say that it was actually a minority of the commissioners who was not at a majority of the meetings, although I don't think any single commissioner, with the possible exception of Alvin, was at every single one. And as we discussed at great length, we went out of our way to provide extra opportunity for the public to comment, including an entire layer of public engagement sessions that had no statutory requirement at all. To Joe's point, again, just because you begin the process doesn't mean you end it the next day. I would like to see it reined in within 6 months, but unlike our attempts to get the POCD in by a certain timeline, you are correct. We're not under a strict deadline. So if it stretches a little longer or goes a little shorter, depending on the nature of the input, all of that is fine. But there is nothing to be gained by not starting the work. It just means that we'll be on the back foot later.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was my thought. You know, starting on Thursday doesn't prevent us from doing any of the things that you outlined or suggested, John. So going forward, then, if there is no objection, I would like to create a subcommittee for subdivision regulations as a committee of the whole commission, including both regular and alternate members, with its first meeting to be held on Thursday, this Thursday, January 28th at 7 p.m. Via Zoom, if there is no objection. Hearing none, we will then begin the work of that subcommittee. And I think I had indicated here that I am unable to attend on Thursday. I will endeavor to be there. It's my night on duty at school, so I may have to duck out of it at certain points, but I will certainly, my intent will be there.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Item B, ZEO memo, interpretation of amended regulations, Article 4A, Section 1, intent. Ms.
Before I
Dunn.
do that, Joe, can I just mention the one packet I sent out because it didn't get on the agenda?
The CFPBA stuff?
It's the planning and zoning land use municipal seminar. So everybody got it. Those dates, the time factor I gave to you is important. If anybody wants to go online on Zoom and attend this seminar, a few of us attended it 2 years ago, and it was just so profound of the knowledge that they dispense at these meetings. And I especially encourage new members to attend it. Haven't decided if I'm going to redo it again. It always helps to have things refreshed, but I'll have my decision made by the time the registration is due. So if you want to go, please let me know by the dates that I gave you. The second item I put in the package, I had noticed that it didn't come out of the mailbox for your packet, is the Connecticut Federation of Planning and Zoning Agencies quarterly newsletter. So you received that after the agenda was sent out, which you received that before you received the meeting package. So did everybody get an opportunity to read my memo concerning, let me just get my memo in front of me, concerning where this originated from? And it is not only the question that Janet sent to me concerning one of her clients, but I also have another case in town on New Road that someone wants to do the same thing. So I guess the question I have to, did everybody read everything that I wrote about this?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So I'm just going to make one comment to it because I know that Janet's here and I think that she wants to weigh in on it. But just this is just something, I did Google a lot on this accessory use, primary use, principal use. And I do have a couple of pages, but one thing that I will read to you, the thought that to put in your mind to think about when this is being discussed by Janet, is one common controversy associated with accessory use is the question of whether such a use can be built on a lot before a principal use is established. For example, can a garage or storage shed be built before the house, or can a doghouse be built on a vacant residential lot? Without specific language permitting the accessory use to stand alone, an accessory use is considered unlawful until the accompanying principal use or structure is established. And in residential, rural agricultural district, the principal use is residential. So that's, if anybody has any questions on anything I wrote, any questions on what I just said here, or if we want to invite Janet in to speak on this. I think she's here, right, Janet?
Yes, yeah,
Yes.
Jen is here.
Okay, so I don't know which direction you want to go into next, Joe, but and again, like I said, I have another inquiry about this, that somebody wants to do exactly the same thing on a piece of subdivision lot that he bought.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Blanchett?
Thank you. And thank you, Cindy, for doing all that research on this subject. I do feel like it is a gray area. That's why I brought it up. And I think it's interesting. I guess you guys aren't really, the lot that's in question, why I raised the question, is a 100% fully approved building lot from 2010 with a DOT permit for the driveway. It's an 11-acre lot, and a Northeast District Department of Health approval of the septic system. So, the gentleman's child is in school in Webster, and he doesn't want to move to Thompson quite yet, but he wants to start with his accessory building, which is for his personal use. And I don't know whether it makes a difference to the commission if it is, a fully approved lot that demonstrates that, the residents can ultimately exist there, versus somebody coming in with, a small lot that wants to put a large structure right in the middle of it. And I can clearly see how that would be a problem in zoning if you could never fit the principal structure on. I will tell you that Killingly, if it's approved in a situation like that is specific to this one lot, if it's approved with all its other approvals, they will allow you to build like the garage, say, before the house. So.
Thank you, Ms. Blanchett. So we've heard from Cindy, we've heard from Ms. Blanchett. I think Cindy's, I suppose both of them really are looking for this commission's thoughts as to whether or not we agree with Cindy's interpretation of of the regulation.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Mr. Krogel.
I would think that if you wanted to put up a garage before the house, you may, but I think everything should be permitted at the same time, as in you need to get your building permit and your septic permit before you would be allowed to build the accessory structure.
But Mike, under the current regulation, I still wouldn't sign off on the building permit if they were building the garage first. Unless you guys told me that, yes, you believe that I misinterpreted.
Even though the building permit or the blueprints and everything else and the permit is approved by the building official?
Right, when, as Janet said, that they have an approved plan, right, Janet? Janet?
Yes, that's correct.
But they haven't gotten a building permit.
Correct.
So if the building permit was sent to me, when I'm called up to sign building permits, and all I saw on the building permit was that they're only building a garage right now. In about 5 years, they're gonna build their house. I wouldn't
We have
sign
to
a
have the-
building permit.
We'd have to have the building permit for the house also first,
Right,
you-
but
but you could
Okay.
build it first.
they,
See, they only want to build the garage right now.
right, and it's not
I-
permitted.
We need the house permit also. That's my opinion. And whichever way you build it, you know, want to spend your
But-
money, it's nothing, but you would have to have the house permit prior to any other construction.
I have a question.
Mr. Santos.
So a friend of mine actually in Woodstock is going through this, and I can't imagine this not happening. Actually, it happening quite often where people have a large piece of property, and the way Janet just explained it, it seemed like there's ample space to build a garage and a house. I can't, people build garages and live in the garage because why they can't afford to build the house right away, right? So they build the garage, they build the house, they live in there, and then they build the house, right? So a friend of mine's doing it in Woodstock right now. So I can't imagine it not being okay if it's proven that they can put a septic, they can put a well, which Jen has already clearly outlined, and there's ample space to build a house in the future based around those parameters.
But
Right,
your
so it just makes
district,
sense.
but your district, Brian, is the primary use of that district is
Yep.
residential.
Yep.
If this person is not going to live in the garage, then he's not using his property at this time for the principal use of the district, which is residential.
Okay, understood. That's the part I'm missing, Cindy. Thank you.
Okay.
I am looking at it that if somebody is building a house, they may want a small structure to store their equipment in while they are building.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
according to the regulation.
Because I thought that happened down on Route 12 down in Perryville. Didn't that gentleman down there, I mean, it's got to be 15 years at this point, but didn't they build the garage first before they built the house? And they stored this stuff in there.
That's not,
For her time.
Yeah, it was before her time, but
that's,
she's a youngster. Okay, that's.
and again, like I said, I have another issue,
understand
and
your
the
point.
gentleman is waiting Wednesday for me to call him.
Yeah.
And I guess, I can extend this further in a discussion that the planner and I had, is that when you move into a residential area, that's what you expect to see is residence. You don't expect to see a garage or 40 by 60 building in the middle of this land, and then you come and say, what's that being used for? And you really don't know what it's being used for. In this case, it's very valid. He wants to use it for storage. So does this other gentleman that talked to me that I have to answer to. But the point is when you move into a residential area, you want to see residents, you want to see houses, you don't want to see sporadic buildings that, what are they using it for type thing. I feel that that's the intent of you dividing your town into districts.
Yeah,
And the primary use of the district.
Yeah, I'm certainly sympathetic to the, to this potential applicant, but I think I tend to agree with Cindy's interpretation of the regulation as we've put it forward.
And just as going along with what you said, Joe, anybody who's worked with me for 3 years, I hope that you know that I do my best to see that these applicants of these questions are answered in favor of the applicant or the person asking the question. But there comes to a point where here's your regulation, here's your protection for your district. And I feel that this is one of those cases. Boy, I've talked
Mr.
much
Chairman, if I
nicer when
may,
what? I talk much nicer when you can see me, right?
Go ahead, Madam Planner.
Yeah, Cindy and I have gone back and forth about this, and actually, whatever she just cited was one of the clearest citations she's given us as to why it would be not permissible. I, as always, tend to go to, you know, what is the purpose of restricting something? And it is generally, you know, to do harm. Now, in that memo that she distributed, there was a similar, and I don't know if this is the other applicant she's talking about, issue raised about whether in the tables of uses, a category for passive storage should be added to enable the discussion of this kind of use, because passive storage is a non-intense use. And in the case of what Janet's talking about, it is in fact also a temporary use for something that is a part of an approved residential plan. So it seems to me somewhat counterproductive, although I would certainly, you know, I certainly recognize the grayness of it. But it does strike me as somewhat counterproductive to dictate to somebody with an approved plan the order in which they have to build the structures on that plan, which are going to be there anyway, right? If he does the house first or he does the garage first, and we know it's still all a piece of one approved plan, which is a residential use. So maybe the answer is indeed to add a category within those tables of uses for passive storage that might require site plan review by the commission to make sure that it is not disruptive to the character of the residential neighborhood. But it seems to me in this case, this garage is going to get built. It's a part of the plan, and perhaps it is overstepping to tell a builder of a home what order they have to do their building in.
Except, you know, that with total transparency on the request, this particular home wouldn't be built for another 5 or 10 years. So you have the risk of, oh, gee, I don't want this land anymore, I'm going to sell it, and somebody comes in and it just opens up a lot of, could open up a lot of issues.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Linke.
Cynthia, and got a good point. Tara got a good point. I think when we changed out, when we were changing the regulations, you know, to do what we were doing to create the districts, corridors, whatever, you know, it seems like what we've accomplished, we're finding out we're getting all this little nitpicking stuff. And, you know, and this is why we can probably, I feel with all this new stuff coming at us because of this, I think it's something we could look at and change, add to, and say, okay, you want to put this garage up or whatever for storage, but you got the permit, but do you have an official permit that should be in the building inspector's office, you know, where the house is going to be, where the septic and the storage and everything. And he wants to be able to put, and this is going to be a two or three stall garage off to the right, about 100 feet. Let him put it up, but long as he pays the permits. I feel it's my land, I'm paying the taxes. I'm going to pay the taxes on the building. But
not the principal use of the district.
I understand. What I'm trying to say, Cynthia, is this is something that we need to look at.
Okay.
And when we have our subcommittees, is to work this in so it could be done, but have a timetable of a house being built too, not 5 years or 7 years. There has to be a timetable. Yeah. This is something that we need to look at. We're finding all new things coming at us, and this is what it's all about.
As you can tell, 7 pages of it. As you can tell, 7 pages of it that you got.
Yeah, but you know, we made the regs try to make it easier for for people to build. I'm looking at some of the things that we have in the last 3 months that you sent out there was like, what, 20 applications and, you know, and everything of billing, you know, all that you've been doing in the last 3 months. I never seen that many, the list this long. Usually it's 2 or 3 or 4. If there wasn't 20, there wasn't one. So that's a progress for us, but we're gonna make the changes. It's called progress. So we need to add a few more things to the regs. Okay, put a subtitle, section 8, whatever. This is this, this is this. Okay, you don't want to put a house up, you want to put this, but you got 2 to 3 years to build a house. End of discussion. You know, I mean, we got to set limits sometimes. You know, we're not trying to be dictative, but you know, residential is residential too.
Yeah, I think in her case, 5 years down the road is just too long a time.
That's kind of but we need to kind of review all of that, come up with some good verbiage, and we can add it into that section or whatever it would be.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Linky. Mr. Krogel, thank you.
Oh, John Rice, just a comment on his, is that, John, you're saying every time, so that's gonna say every time somebody reads something in our regulation and it's not conforming, okay, we're gonna go back and let's change that regulations to make it conforming to what the applicant wants to do. That's what it sounds like to me.
I don't think I meant it that way. What I meant by that was, Mr. Rice, is that every time everybody's gonna is gonna read into it and try to interpret it their way. So we are learning. I'm still learning a lot of things, and you know, and I listen to people who will say this or say that, and you try to get a good clarification. Okay, this is something new. I never expected this to come out of the woodwork, and I don't think Cynthia, nobody did. So now we got this person that's got a piece of land. He wants to put up, call it a storage building. As long as it's on the plans, everything's there. I believe if you can't put a house up in 2 years, then, you know, we just got to figure out one little thing at it. It's all baby steps here with us.
Okay,
So,
Joe?
Mr. Chairman, so John,
Mr.
to your,
Rice, and then Mr. Santos.
John, to your point, so if he doesn't build his house in 2 years, what does he do? Take the garage down?
Yeah, why can't we? You don't have.
Well,
I mean, I think it's just hard to enforce,
Yeah,
John.
I mean,
Like, it's like,
yeah, you would
what's
be-
the penalty of that, right? What's the
Yeah,
penalty?
you would be able to do that. I think that's, we have a process, we have a zoning enforcement office, sir, that's interpreting our regulations that we just developed, and she makes a decision one way or the other. And the alternative is that the applicant doesn't agree with it, they go to ZBA, and then let the ZBA could handle it. Or take Cindy to court, or planning and zoning to court. But that's what we're paying her for, to interpret the current regulations, not to change them every time something comes up.
I didn't say, I wasn't saying, Mr. Rice, about changing it. I was saying
Well,
maybe add something in there, but still
Well-
keep the regs, but you add a little sub, you know, sub part A or sub part B, where it still has to, you know, meets all the requirements, meets all the everything. We're just not gonna hand it over to them. Still, the CEO still is gonna do her job. I'll support her any day of the week. But we did the new regulations is try to get people to move into this town, build things and everything, so we can increase the people, you know, kids going to school, having families and everything. This is what it's all about. But, you know, I mean, I'm not saying, let's just stick to the regs then
No.
and say, Cindy, just tell them no. All right,
Okay.
if that's the case, it's no.
Joe,
Okay.
I think
Mr.
that
Blackburn.
one of the problems with putting the structure up first, storage structure, that's pretty subjective. They can put up a storage structure that could house 2 cars, or I could put up a storage structure that I could put all my equipment under and it'd cover 1.5 acres. So in respect to that, I'm leery because of it's too subjective, and as far as if they're gonna put a house on later, there should definitely be a plan that shows that the house and perhaps the septic tank and well should be put in. That's another subject. I just think that the storage structure by itself, passive storage structure, what's passive? I'm gonna park my equipment in it for the winter, or I'm gonna be pulling it in the yard and parking it 6 days a week. I hate to see Cindy getting put on the chopping block by somebody because they say, well, you're being too strict. But I do think that putting a structure up, a passive structure or storage structure before the house is there is opening us up for a problem down the road.
So it sounds like, Mr. Santos, I know you had wanted to say something. I wasn't sure if what you said in agreement with Mr. Rice was what you had meant to say. Did I cut
Yeah,
you?
no, I was just worried about what's the consequence? How do we control the consequence of that if they don't follow? And I agree with what Randy just said too. You know, I feel like if they're not going to build a house and live in the garage and have the intent of building a house, and I totally support what Cindy has done, period. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Santos. It sounds like the consensus of the commission is in agreement with the ZEO's interpretation of the regulations. So.
All right, I will write down a letter or an email, and I'll let that other gentleman know that has contacted me.
Thank you. Thank you to the members of the commission. Done. Is there, for the members of the commission, were there any other parts of the ZEO memo that anyone wanted to draw attention to or ask Ms. Dunn about?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Dave Poplowski. So the shooting ranges, Cindy, I've had some questions from neighbors about shooting ranges and definitions of shooting ranges, and I'm glad you brought it up because I had some difficulty trying to answer that. You know, the people shooting, inviting friends, are away from the homes but shooting over wetlands.
That comes under the last part of the review is under new business, because that was in the regulations suggestions.
Right.
Right.
Oh, they're on. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that comes under C, under new business.
My mistake. Sorry.
That's okay.
No worries.
I'm glad somebody's paying attention to that one.
Everybody pays attention to you, Cindy. You know that.
Oh, thank you.
Great. Item 8C, Town of Thompson budget reports, December 2020. Any comments or questions regarding that?
Trying to pushing a button 5 times here to unmute myself. There's still enough money. Bottom line, everybody, no, probably not everybody got the package, but anyway, we only spent the percentage used is 42% at this time, so shouldn't be any problem. I met with Orla, the finance director, last Friday to go over the budget. And I'm scheduled to meet with the selectmen on February 9th. I think it's around 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock. I have 3 budgets to do, so I forgot what time they start, but we will be going through the budget for planning and zoning on the 9th. If there's any questions about that?
I don't think so right now. I see none. Thank you, John.
Okay.
Item 9, correspondence. In our packets, wherever they are, the minutes of the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting, which was canceled, so there probably weren't very many minutes. The bylaws, which we did, I think most of us received, and then these public hearing notices from Douglas. Item 10, signing of Mylar. There's none. Item 11, old business. 11A, the Brickyard Road bonding. Ms. Dunn included some pictures in her memo. Ms.
And
Dunn.
Jared can put those up in color if you guys like to see them in color. They're much better. The pictures are
Yeah.
much better in color. Can you put them up, Chair?
You got those coming up?
I'm not sure what number that is. I think that was 3, but let me just go to my memo here. Entrance driveway down to the pit, which needs to be leveled and reclaimed. And then the pile of soil behind there, that pit there, that's the topsoil that's going to be going all around the property. So that's not going to be touched until everything's leveled out. But he has made progress. You can see from, if you want to throw another picture up. Does anybody have any questions on this picture? He did move, if you're looking at it on the right where you see the truck, he did move, that was further on down. He keeps moving it up as he's filling. This is when you go into the driveway and it's on the left, and last time that was not leveled, and it's pretty leveled, and he's pulling it down. You can see a little bit of the gully in the back there on the right side of the picture. And the trees, branches are on the ground there so that people don't ride their dirt bikes on his property. Any questions on that picture? Okay.
Trying to find the last, oh, I think this is it. Yep.
And again, that's the pit that he's going to fill. You can tell it's from the top on the left and it's going down. And like I said, he is working. Of course, he's going to be delayed because there's going to be snow now next week, or this week and maybe next week. So, but he is making progress, and he is staying away from the land, the Army Corps land in the back there.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah. Any questions for the CEO? Thank you, Cindy, for.
Joe, I have one of Cindy. Cindy, those trailers that are in that last picture, or maybe before that, he plans on removing them box trailers?
He plans on removing the box trailers. I know the lifts there are going to stay.
The screener?
The screener, and there's some equipment that's going to stay because it is going to be farmland for planting afterwards. He's going to be leasing it out for planting. So there, I know I have it in my last report what was staying down there, but I can re-ask him.
Yeah.
But yes, the trailers are supposed to be coming out, but I'm going to make that note there to ask him again. Or read my last report.
If he's gonna leave the screener there, maybe he's gonna screen that loam or that dirt that he plans on.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he's going to do that, but it's also, he's leaving something there for the people who are going to be coming in to do, to plant the land. It's going to be cornfields.
Yeah, but what does he need a screener for?
I don't know. So
Ask him that, because I can't.
I will find that out for you, John.
Thank you.
It's gonna screen the loom and whatever, because the stuff's been sitting so long, it's got so much growth in it, you have to get it out, otherwise it's gonna be tough to, when you
That's
spread
what I assume that, John, but I'm just wondering why he wants to leave it there. I'm a little
I could be
little bit
wrong. But I know that there are some pieces of equipment he is leaving there for a reason, for the growers, for the people who are going to rent it, to plant it for corn. I will find out from him.
Maybe we can ask our farmer that's on a commission, what would you use a screener for in agricultural purposes?
Well, we're certainly going to see this again on future agendas, so Cindy can follow up with that.
I don't see anything there that they're gonna want for planting corn there. The people that use it for corn, got equipment that could do that job in about 2 days.
Okay, I made a note, guys.
Thank you. Any further questions about the Brickyard Road bonding? Item 11B, 0 Plum Road, Halmeric upgrade of Plum.
Everybody.
Cindy, was this was in your memo as well, correct?
Oh yeah, Plum Road, yes, but basically, yeah, I know that Bruce is here. Bruce, do you want to talk first or?
No, you can go ahead and do a recap if you like, Cindy.
Okay, so the recap. So the recap, we had met, Bruce and I had met last week, and the discussion came up that when Mr. Merrick requested a building permit for the residential dwelling on that property, I refused to sign off on it because of the building permit was under the criteria. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'm reading from here and talking. I'll start over again. When that building permit was taken out, it was under the criteria of the old regulations. And our discussion the other day, Bruce and our discussion was centered around the 202 zoning regulations. District dimensions with states to prepare. I'm sorry, I got to read this again. Okay.
You'd reach
All
out
right.
to the Attorney Roberts, right?
Right. Yes. So the point is, do I have my pages right? All right. The point is he was refused a building permit because of Article 5 dimensional requirements, Section 1, which states in an R40 zone, 150-foot frontage on the town maintained and accepted roadway is required. That's in the letter that was sent to Mr. Merrick from myself, signed by myself, the building inspector, and the highway director. But the wording maintain an accepted roadway is required is not in the regulation. So what he's now basing his request on is the fact that this is a town road. It is not on the list of unaccepted streets at all. It is on the list 0.30 miles on the maintained streets by the highway department. So he's asserting that he has the frontage on a legal town road and he should be issued a building permit for the residential dwelling. And I sent this over to Attorney Roberts, and I believe I forwarded that decision to you guys via email, right?
Yeah.
Did everybody get his decision? Let me get the folder. So, okay, so I basically told Attorney Roberts the issue, and his answer was, I would stick with the interpretation contained in the 2020 letter, which you guys have gotten a copy of that too, as it reflects the town's consistent policy. I also think that the definition of street in the 2012 regulations may rule out the use of unimproved roadway as frontage. If the property owner disagrees with our position, he can appeal it. So that's his opinion, that we can stick by the original letter from the building office with 3 signatures stating that he can't build there until it's a developed road. Any questions? Bruce, did I miss anything?
No, the letter says that it's consistent with town's previous rulings on this matter. Although when we read the regulations, we don't see that it's very clear that the roadway has to be improved to the standards of a new town road. I don't believe it says that. It refers to the subdivision regulations for improvement of existing or new roads as they pertain to subdivisions, but it doesn't speak to what happens when you have an individual who has property on an existing legal town road. Now, some of the regulations in the ordinances speak to an improved town road. In other words, your new definitions for street say that the road is improved, but it doesn't say to what extent. In other words, Mr. Merrick is improving the road right now as we speak. He's widened it, he's brought in fill and compacted it, and he is improving it. And so his question to me was, well, there are people who live on gravel roads about town, Owen Davis Road and some others, and they can get a building permit and build. Why couldn't I get a building permit if my road was improved to the extent of a gravel road? It's something that could be traveled upon. The town ordinance, their definition of street talks about just a legal road. It doesn't say anything about it being improved. So I think it's a valid question on Mr. Merrick's part as to why he would be required to build an existing legal town road to upgrade it to the standards of a brand new town road.
That road dead ends at the end of his property, right? Correct?
No. Right now, the road, the paved portion of the road ends at Vincent Benoit's property, and then it extends another 600 feet along Vincent Benoit's property and along another property owner on the other side before it gets to his property. In other words, there's 600 feet of roadway that he has to improve even before he gets to his property line. And then according to the interpretation that we're currently under, he has to then improve it another 150 feet along his property so that he has 150 feet of frontage on a town road.
He owns both sides of that road, though, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So is it subdivision regulations that require a road improved to the higher standard that we're talking here, or is it just an individual house? Point being, if you were allowed to subdivide it, if you wanted to subdivide it, you'd have to improve the road to meet the specs, the higher specs that we're talking about. But if he's just building one house and there's no property beyond it, was what I was getting at. Why does he have to go with 150 feet to have a paved road go past his house if that's where it's going to end?
Oh, that's a good question.
Randy, if I can butt in, doesn't that go all the way to the trail?
I don't know.
It continues beyond his property.
Okay, that was my question. I was going to go look at that, and it kind of slipped my mind and never did it.
You better put it in 4-wheel drive when you do.
Well, be safe tomorrow. It's going to be frozen stiff as a board.
So
I just want to, if I may, I just want to make look at the code of ordinances. Okay, the definition of a street. I think what you just mentioned is, I'll read it, is that any town-owned way constructed for and dedicated to movement of vehicles and pedestrians. this word shall not include private driveways or right of ways. So again, you know, that you can call it a street, a road, or whatever you want to call it, but it's still a way of moving people and vehicles, a mode of doing that. The other
Right.
thing, if I,
That is exactly correct. And
well,
it doesn't say that it's constructed to the standards of a new town road according to the subdivision regulations. It just says any town-owned way constructed for and dedicated to movement of vehicles and pedestrians.
where are you reading that?
That's what you just read. I just repeated it. So the definition of street in the town road ordinance says any town-owned way constructed for and dedicated to movement of vehicles and pedestrians.
So,
It doesn't say to what standards. It doesn't say.
no, right, but if you go back to the table of contents in the board of the Code of it says the unaccepted street with that is, because it's not an accepted street. It says, see the current zoning regulations. Correct, if you want to go to page 4, the Code of Ordinances.
But as I had mentioned, John, that is not on the list of unaccepted streets. That part of Plum Road is not on the list.
Right, and it's not 30 miles, it's point.
No, I said point 30. I said point 30.
Yeah.
So
Then,
that's why my office is painted gray. That's a joke, guys. So,
okay, further on, if you're looking, I'm just reading off of the road ordinance, because I think I still refer it to the planning and zoning of updating a road. And if you look at updating upgrade existing street shall be referred to the commission for conformance with the town's subdivision regulations, requirements for upgrading existing streets. So how do you do that? That, you know, that's in the ordinance. Is on the procedures, section 3 procedure. And the other, I guess the last thing I have under that is section 7 is standards. Standards and applications referred to the commission shall conform to the requirements of the town subdivision regulations, and the road standards and the road ordinance. So I'm just saying that, you know, I guess what he's saying is it doesn't pertain, but in the ordinance, it reads to me that it does. That's where the subdivision comes into play. Whether it's not a subdivision, it's still addressing the roads.
but I think that's what Bruce is basing on, that this is not a subdivision.
Right, I know.
So what do you follow in the subdivision regulations?
I'm following the Code of Ordinances, the latest thing. It says under standards, applications, which this is, referred to the commission shall conform to the requirements of the town subdivision regulations, the road standards and the road ordinance. And then you go back and forth to the road ordinance.
So John, what you're saying is that the ordinance uses the subdivision standard, even though to apply to situations other than the subdivision.
Right.
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
Because it's still, you know, you go back to the definition of a street that I read a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
I have to find that again.
And we have the attorney's letter as well as part of.
But again, you go back to a street, any town owned that, you know, that Bruce just read and I read earlier. So The other concern I may have, Mr. Chairman, is that, he's owning all that land. I don't know why it goes down to 18 feet. I think we got, at least I did, we got a new revised map here. Why can't we, should it get approved, why can't it be wide enough for, you take these large fire trucks or ambulances that we have, I think that 30 feet, I don't know what the problem with developing a road to meet the standards of 30 feet are, other than taking some more of his land.
John, if you look at the plans,
Yeah,
again, as I was telling Mr. Blackmer, the first 600 feet or so of the roadway travels between two property owners that are not part of this application. And the highway width is established through until you get to Mr. Merrick's land. And because of the grading that's required, if you look at the grading lines, the heavy lines, they go right to the right-of-way limits. There's no, if you make the road wider, then the grading is going to spill over onto the neighbors' properties. And we don't have the right to do that. We only have the width that we have to work with. And that's why the road has to be the width that it is. And, an 18 feet wide paved or trap rock road or any type of regular surface is adequate for an emergency vehicle to travel down. A lot of your roads in town, all your back roads around town are oil gravel roads, and they're about 16, 17, 18 feet wide. Some are a little wider in places and some are narrower in places, but emergency vehicles can pass on an 18-foot wide road, but that is the limit of the right-of-way or limits of the highway that we have to work with.
so from Mr. Benoit's, that he made that turnaround, that cul-de-sac, from
Correct.
that section, going up to Mr. Merrick's, Mr. and Mrs. Merrick's property. Kenneth Stenson owns that property to the right, is heading up that way.
Yes.
And
That's
Dave Benoit owns the other side. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lenke.
I just want to let you know that Mr. Krugel had to step out. He had to get back to the house. Something came up, so he had to excuse himself. That's why I'm interrupting.
Thank you, Mr. Lenke. Gloria, it's 8:13 if you want to note that in the minutes. Thank you. So the question before us is, sort of two, I guess several fold, right? Do we, accept, the applicant is putting forth the idea that they have frontage on a roadway, and so that the building permit should be granted as is. Originally, this came before us, right, with the idea of approving sort of this application to improve the road. And so I think Mr. Woodis and the applicant have been here for a couple of meetings now, a few meetings. And so certainly I think, we need to look at moving on this action and making a decision and going forward.
So Bruce, do you want me to read what you wrote in the letter on January 20th?
No, is that when I asked to reduce it to a gravel road?
Right, yes.
Yeah, well, I think the letter went out to the commissioners, right? They all have that letter.
No, because I didn't get it in time for you sent it January 20th. And the packets went out by then.
Please read it, Cindy.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead, sure.
Okay. Dear Cynthia, thank you for meeting with me yesterday to discuss the regulations and language concerning roadway improvements for Plum Road. As we discussed, it appears that careful inspection of the town ordinance, zoning regulations, and subdivision regulations do not specifically or clearly address the issue of properties fronting on an existing legal town road that is not maintained. Based on our interpretation, it would appear that the Merricks have an existing lot with more than 150 foot of frontage on an existing town road. Having gained approval of the Health Department and the Wetlands Commission, it appears that Mr. Merrick's property should be able to apply and obtain a building permit without having to formally improve the road to the standards of a new town road. As such, we are proposing to modify the plan for the improvement of the road to provide a gravel base complete with culverting and a road-bearing surface of trap rock, bituminous millings or similar surface treatment on top of the layers of compacted and processed gravel. We have modified the improvement plans and construction details accordingly, and will provide revised plans for the commission to review and comment in accordance with the town road ordinance. That's the letter.
Yeah, which is essentially what we've just been talking about
Right,
tonight.
right.
It's the same thing. So, I mean, one of the primary goal of the Merricks is to get a building permit. So my question to the commission, regardless of how the regulations have been interpreted or how you're going to interpret them tonight, is how can he get a building permit out of this? If the commission chooses to say, nope, we're going to do what we've always done. We're going to make you build a town road to town road standards, new town road standards according to subdivision regulations, end of story. Then where does that leave the Merricks? I mean, they have health department approval, they've got wetlands approval, they've got house plans, they're ready to start building. So can they get a building permit anyway? Or what has to happen here so that they can get started?
If I can, Joe, just Mr. Chairman, just another question, Bruce. The portion that Mr. Benoit came up and made the cul-de-sac, I'm wondering if the town had made him improve that road to do that. Cindy, in your investigation, have you checked?
I believe that Mr. Vincent Benoit paid to have all that done as a
Okay, just-
requirement by the town, yes.
I'm just wondering, I'm all for, kind of letting them build a house up there, but I really have to get a better road in there than what that is. I can almost live with that 18-foot narrow portion that he has to go through, but definitely expand it out a little bit going up that hill. And I'm not in favor of the grindings because I've seen those with the town plow, just plow them over to the side of the road eventually. And then, like I say, it becomes a town road if we do accept it as an accepted road, and the town's going to be responsible for plowing it. Then they're going to come back to the highway department and say, hey, you better fix this road. It's got a lot of potholes, and you plowed it over to the side of the road. So what's the intention, Bruce, of the applicant to maintain that road from Mr. Benoit's property, that first cul-de-sac?
Well, I think that's up to the town and possibly up to you folks. Because right now, all the Merricks want is to build a driveway to their property and build a house and maintain it themselves. If the town is saying, no, you have to build this to town road standards, I guess then the presumption is going to be they're doing that because they want to accept it as a maintained portion of the town road, that they would extend that maintained portion from where Vinnie's cul-de-sac is to where the Merrick's cul-de-sac is going to be. So, in some way, it's actually forcing this to be a dedicated, some sort of a road dedication in the future. Even though the Merricks could care less, and they've been willing to improve the road so that they can get there. And to whatever extent the mandate turns out to be, even though all they want is a glorified driveway to get to their house.
Yeah, Joe, if I can,
Mr. Santos.
This might be a really dumb question, but can it be reclassified as a driveway instead of calling it a town road? I hate to ask that question, but I want to just pose it.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Mr. Santos. I think the issue is the frontage bit.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point, Joe. Yeah.
Can I just throw something else out? I was looking through the zoning regulations under definitions, and they talk about non-conforming lots. And they say, for the purpose of the regulations, a non-conforming lot shall be one that had separate existence prior to the enactment of these zoning regulations or any amendment thereto that requires a larger area, frontage, width, or depth than that existing prior to such an enactment. And then it goes on to say that single-family dwellings are permitted on single-family dwellings may be erected on any non-conforming lot that was in separate ownership as evidenced by a deed recording in the land records prior to the effective date of zoning, blah, blah, blah. So could this, for the purpose of permitting, could this be considered a legal non-conforming lot? Because we're saying it doesn't have legal frontage because it's not on an improved and maintained town road, but it is a legal lot and it's a legal non-conforming lot. So could that be a way around of getting a building permit and making this just simply a really nice driveway?
So in your view, Bruce, what makes it non-conforming? He's got enough space there.
Space, yeah.
Is the 150-foot frontage on a improved town road? Is that?
Yeah. I think that's I think that's the only hitch here is the 150 frontage, John.
Yeah.
Bruce, before you get to Merrick's land, who owns that? Benoit?
Yes.
All right.
I didn't hear that.
When you're going in on that road to get to Merrick's, you go, Benoit is the last property before Merrick's?
Yes.
On the left side.
He's on the
Just
left.
once. All right. What if, but Merrick has no intention whatsoever of subdividing this, right?
Correct.
Okay, and if you go past Merrick's property, you end up on the trail, rail to trail?
Right. His properties go all the way to the trail, as does the extension of Plum Road. They all go to the trail.
But nobody can drive on the trail except for possibly emergency vehicle if somebody would need that, an ambulance or something on the trail. There's not any vehicular traffic on that, right? So theoretically, there shouldn't be any traffic beyond where Merrick would build his house.
Right, it's unimproved. I mean, it's really unimproved past where he wants his house. It's basically a footpath through the woods.
All right, so why can't why can't he have the house there with but if you were to want to subdivide it somewhere down the road has to be improved to the standards of a subdivision.
I think that would be an effective compromise.
And in the meantime, he can have a glorified driveway. He's the only one that has access to the property there.
Correct.
I have a question.
Ms. Langley.
So if you do that and then he sells it, then can it be used as a subdivision if the next person coming by wants to do that? Because now his glorified driveway is a glorified road.
Well, he can do it if he brings the road up to standards for a subdivision. If the road isn't improved, it can only have that one house on it, cannot have more. Unless somebody brings the road up to subdivision specs.
And then he would maintain that? We wouldn't have to maintain it?
Well, you said he sold it. Whoever's gonna, no, if it's up to subdivision standards, I assume the town would probably have to take it over, although looking at the new regulations, where we're trying to eliminate more roads for the town to have to take care of, maybe it's a dead end there, that's as far as it can go, but for now, if there's only gonna be one house on it, I don't see why they need to have a road up to subdivision specs.
I think Charlene's question was more if it's a glorified driveway, who's maintaining it? Is it the homeowner, the Merricks? Which I
Who's
think
doing
the
it
answer is
now?
yes.
Yes.
Correct.
They should take care of their glorified driveways, their problem, not the town's.
Mhm.
You better get that in writing somewhere.
And
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lanky.
Mr. Rice just made a good comment. I like it. But you still want to have the access to the trail. If, like Mr. Blackburn said, there is going to be no subdivision. It's just going to be the one house. Okay, it's going to be, you can call it a glorified driveway. I get that, but it still will be considered it's still a town road, even though it hasn't been used for whatever reason. So, but we still want the access. We still want to be able to have access to the trail. That would be my point.
Well, you
agree,
have
John.
access to the trail, but whoever's gonna go from Merrick's house to the trail would be responsible for fixing that, because that's not approved road of any sort.
But it's still considered a town road, isn't it, Mr. Blackman?
Yes.
It's part of the town. So even if it's considered part of the town as a road that hasn't been maintained for whatever, but it's still part of the town. So if they improve it to make it so they can have good access to their house that they want to build on the lot that's there, then, it ain't gonna hurt a town plow to go up a dirt road. I'd rather plow a dirt road than sometimes an asphalt road, or like Mr. Rice said, you put one of them,
Millings.
That's Millen Road, you could rip that up in no time, because it just doesn't compact right. It won't seal right unless you soak it with oil, but I'd rather see a dirt road and, let them have the access, but I would still like to, I still would like to see the access to the trail for if people wanted to go up and walk the trail from one side, or you need to get an ambulance up there or whatever, like you suggested, Mr. Blackburn. So, that's the only thing.
Okay, so somebody fell up there an hour ago and you gotta get an ambulance up there tomorrow or tonight. Is that road passable so that you can get to the trail with emergency vehicle or not?
It should be. It should have been still the width or whatever, unless it got grown. It has been grown. Everything grew over a little bit
I
over
wish
the years.
I wish I'd remembered to go check that out before tonight's meeting, but
We went up. I went up there. I
Miss
went up the
Langlois?
road, I went up the road with Frank's truck and you could get, to the cul-de-sac. We went all the way to the back to where they were stacking wood. Like the truck went back there, that was fine. I guess my question is that when Mr. Benoit was putting in his house, he had to do that road. That was one of the stipulations. He had to make the road and the cul-de-sac so that he could get a house on his crappy driveway up in the back. He doesn't get a glorified driveway. We get a glorified road, but he doesn't get that. So I guess my concern would be is that now from the cul-de-sac, that's a nice cul-de-sac. If we have that road or the 600 feet of glorified driveway, road, or whatever, like eventually we're gonna have to pay for that as a town because somebody's gonna have to take care of that. And is that him taking care of the 600 feet? Or is that gonna be all dirt and then it's his glorified driveway? And why did we make Vinny do all that to get his house on his crappy driveway and we have a beautiful cul-de-sac?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Langlois. And my question about the frontage still remains, I think.
Okay, well, to just back up, let's just talk about, there's been some questions regarding who would maintain and that sort of thing. If the commission ruled that the Merricks could get a building permit, then this roadway is nothing more than a driveway to their house. And this driveway would be maintained by the Merricks because it's not a town road. So the town would not be responsible for maintenance. As far as emergency vehicles, rescuing somebody up on the trail, it's no different than it is now or was before, where the road ended at the cul-de-sac at Benoit's and the ambulance would have, at that point, would have had to stop there. Now, with a driveway going up to the Merrick's new house that's going to be built, they would be able to get a little bit further, but they still wouldn't be able to get to the trail because the rest of the roadway, as I said, is nothing more than a glorified footpath until you get to the trail. So nothing changes there. And so the town doesn't become more responsible for maintaining the driveway any more than they would be responsible for maintaining anyone else's driveway. It's just whether or not you agree with the interpretation that the Merricks have an existing non-conforming lot because they don't have frontage as described and defined in the ordinances and the regulations, but under the regulations under non-conforming lot, they would be entitled to get a building permit. And this might solve the short-term, might be the short-term solution. And then if they or anyone else who lived there and wanted to subdivide, they would have to clearly go through the subdivision regulations in regards to upgrading it to a town road status.
And there's no property between Merrick's and the trail that somebody else owns that they could say they want to put a house on?
Nope.
Okay, so they really, as far as the road goes, Merrick's are on a dead-end road.
Correct. Except, but one other thing, and people seem to be concerned about access to the trail. And right now, people have access to the trail along Plum Road. Plum Road is a legal town road. People can walk on it. So, regardless of what the Merricks may want or desire, people will still be able to walk up their driveway, Plum Road, and walk to the airline trail if they desire, because it's a town road, and vice versa.
Mr. Chairman, just got a quick
Mr.
question.
Poplawski.
Charlene, when you were up there, was there ability to park at the end of that existing cul-de-sac and then walk the footpath up to the airline trail?
Not at this time there isn't. They kind of have like logs and then they had
No. He's talking about at the end of the existing paved portion.
at the cul-de-sac. Yeah, you could park on the circle. Yes.
So, okay, so people are probably could access it from that cul-de-sac, which is probably what the intention was back then.
Right.
Or part of the intention to make that a cul-de-sac so that Plum Road had access to the airline trail further back.
Yeah, I don't think so. Back in the day when Vinny did it, I think it was in the late 80s. I don't think the airline trail existed as it does now as a recreational trail.
Yeah, I think it
think
was the intention of a subdivision back there is what that's how I remember it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'll just remind you that we've actually discussed this issue about access to the airline trail before, and the Merricks had indicated when the assumption was that it would be a town road as opposed to a driveway. You know, they had indicated that they were okay with foot and bike traffic, but not with parking. And our suggested compromise at that time was to post no parking signs on the portion of the town road that goes beyond the, you know, to the Merrick's property. If it becomes a driveway, there's no need for the town to post a no parking sign in somebody's private driveway, right? Because it's private property. I think the suggestion that that section of the road be essentially decommissioned as a town road where it becomes a private driveway is quite logical. And I'll also remind you that we are certainly, we've already expressed an allowance of shared drives in the new regulations, which we are intending to carry into the subdivision regulations. So even if in the future, assuming that that goes to the process as we've been describing it, a subdivision would be possible along a shared drive and the town still wouldn't be on the hook for the maintenance.
Yeah, thank you.
Good point.
But
Mr. Rice.
it's not it's still gonna be a town road. They always keep referring to, you know, Mr. Merrick's driveway. It's not gonna be his driveway. It's gonna be a town road. He's gonna use it as a driveway, but some discussion of legalese is gonna have to look at whether he says that he thinks that it's his driveway and not a town road. Because if it's a town road, then, you know, anybody can walk up and go to the trail. I only can envision that that'll be some access point or exit point down the road when the trail keeps on developing.
You got that right, Mr. Rice.
So what is the proposed action of the commission?
One more comment, Joe, just to
Mr.
add to, is that what if Mr. Merrick takes it upon himself with direction probably from the highway superintendent, director, is to improve the road as a gravel road, because that's pretty much what it is right now. And build it as a gravel road right up to where it meets the trail, right at the end of that. And it's not the end of his property, I guess, but where he's doing all that wood cutting up there. And have it a gravel road. He's being a nice guy and improves that road. And gravels it the way it's supposed to be with a good sub base.
And we wouldn't be responsible for the town road?
Well, as much as we are, as a dirt road, but I'll tell you, if you talk to Mr. Benoit, or the director, about plowing a dirt roads, he's not gonna be in favor of that, because I'll tell you, I have one up on Dutton Road behind me, and when them trucks go through there, all I can see is dollar signs being repaired for them trucks.
Right.
Well, I think that wasn't one of the things that when we tabled it the last time, didn't we want to know, did Rich look at it? And he said what, Cindy?
Did Rich look at what?
What we've been talking about, the
The
road.
road. She was sleeping.
No, I'm not sleeping. I don't understand. You have to ask Rich, you know, what he thinks about this plan. Did I have a discussion with him with what's coming up tonight?
No, Cindy, there was I think you probably can refer to that letter Because didn't you say you, Rich, and somebody else?
Signed the letter, and Rich said, the letter said that it had to be set to the standards of the 2012 Town of Thompson zoning regulations of 150-foot frontage on a town maintained and accepted roadway is required. So we signed that. The three of us signed it, the building inspector, Rich, and I. But the regulation only says minimum lot frontage on a public street. Does not say maintain an accepted roadway is required in the regulation. That has been the practice, the historical practice of the town of Thompson, that it has to be a finished road. So I read this to him and he just, shrugged his shoulders the other day and he said, well, the commission will do what the commission will do. He didn't give an opinion one way or the other. If that's an
Can I-
answer to your question, Chris,
We had a
Charlene.
we had a brief meeting early on with Richard Benoit and
Right.
Cynthia and the Merricks, and it was clear that if this was going to be built as a town road and accepted as a town road, that he wanted it built to town road standards and paved.
Right. Yes, that was clear at that meeting.
If it's
Yes.
a town road that he's going to maintain, he wants it paved. That is his mission, that he actually stated in our meeting, to make all the roads in town paved. And not with just oil gravel, but with bituminous pavement, bituminous concrete pavement. That is his mission and goal in life as Public Works Director. So just being clear about that, so that if this is to be a town road, his feeling and desire is that it would be a paved road.
Thank you, Mr. Willis.
But he he did not have an opinion when I read him this section the other day with me.
Got it.
In my
Right.
office.
Right.
I guess I'm just,
Right.
Joe, I'm sorry.
No.
I know you want is there a way of, I don't know if as I mentioned before, Mr. Merrick gravels that, compacts it the way it's supposed to be compact, you just make it a gravel road and it's still a town road. It's just that he's generous and he improves the road in a sense. I don't know how that would work if legal.
I think if Mr. Merrick can get a building permit, that he's willing to improve the road as a gravel road with proper compaction, proper materials, even installing the culvert and putting in an area to turn around at the end. I believe that he is absolutely willing to do that.
And the town would not maintain it.
Town would not maintain it, still be a town road. It'd be his- Right, it would be his driveway. He would maintain it for himself.
Yeah, I guess the only question the commission would have is that, what is Mr. Benoit gonna say about this?
Well, I don't know. I think Mr. Benoit's been a good neighbor so far to the Merricks. I don't think
Yeah.
there's gonna be a problem.
Okay.
So with that stipulation, then that would be written, signed by Mr. Merrick, and then that would be applied to the building permit before I sign the building permit.
Cindy,
Correct.
could you, I would think we would, or the commission, would we run that by Rich there and see if that's possible to do that? Rich, not Rich Benoit, legalese.
Rich Roberts.
Yeah.
Chairman, I agree because, if we're relying on Mr. Merrick to sand it, plow it, and we're letting it be a public way to the airline trail and it's still a town road, there's liability there, I feel.
Okay.
Folks, I see there's Candace Merrick is potentially on there down in the corner. Folks, are you there? If you're there, do you want to say anything at this point? Candace or Hal, are you there? You have to turn off the mute. There we go.
Here we go, Bruce. I can hear you now. Yeah, I have no problem for an ambulance or anything, or somebody riding their bicycle down there. The big thing is I don't want people pulling up with horse trailers, parking and accessing the trail from my property, because they'd have to pull over to my land to do it, you know? And I give up the cul-de-sac area to turn around for the town and everything. That's no problem. You know, it's plowing the driveway coming up. That's not an issue for me. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
yeah, thank you,
yes.
Mr. Merrick. We appreciate
Yeah.
it. Thank you.
And being responsible for, you know, people passing across the land. Because the trail, if you go down that trail, the old road used to go straight where Bruce flagged it out, but the trail they're using goes on my property. And what if somebody gets hurt down there? I just don't want to be responsible. And so the town always own the road, you know, that's not a problem because you own it now. I'll take care of the road coming in off the cul-de-sac up to the house and make sure it's plowed. I got loaders and stuff.
With that, is there a path forward that the commission would like to propose?
Well, John suggested that this be written up and sent over to Rich, our attorney.
Of what we're proposing, to have Mr. Merrick gravel the rest of the road, the town-owned road, and gravel, don't have to be, you know, make it a gravel road, period. And that way, you know, he agrees. I think he would have to sign something agreeing that he would maintain that portion of the road, just in case, God forbid, he gets sick or gets hurt doing all that wood cutting up there. The ambulance has to get there and have no way of getting there.
So is there any objection to from the commission to having that proposal sent to Attorney Roberts so that we could act on it at our next meeting?
Joe, if I may again, is that, how about not to, so we don't have to prolong this another month?
Right.
Is that upon the approval of Rich, the lawyer, approving our proposal, that Cindy would sign off on it so they could get a building permit?
So you're moving for provisional acceptance pending legal review.
Right.
Okay, but will Mr. Merrick have to sign anything for the zoning record?
I think that he should be required to sign that he can't subdivide up there unless the road is improved to the higher standards we were talking about. He says he doesn't want to do it. If that property cannot be subdivided, it would protect the town from having to put in a subdivision grade road. It sounds to me like.
But if you wanted to subdivide, Randy, a subdivision application would have to include a plan for whatever improvement was required, whether it be a road or a paved shared drive. So that's a condition of any subdivision application, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But if there's no property beyond his that somebody could want to build on or whatever, he's the one that's going to have control over whether anybody wanted to put another building on there or not, as long as he owns it.
Correct. Yeah.
If it's written into the records so that if he sells it to somebody else and they want to put a subdivision in up there, it would stay with the land records. It has to be done before that could be considered.
Randy, let me butt in if I'm looking at the map, but there's another homeowner, Mr. Stenson. I don't know what's on that property, but he owns quite a bit of property across from Mr. Benoit, that from Mr. Benoit's cul-de-sac, I'm guessing it's probably 40 feet, probably a couple 300 feet. What, Bruce, would you guess?
Oh, I think he has way more than 300 feet of frontage.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he has a
But
lot.
there again, that's, you're talking about Mr. Herrick's subdivision, maybe Mr. Stenson, once that road is there, that wanna have a subdivision. But there again, if he did it, to the point is that he'd have to upgrade the road.
Yeah.
We're just making a gravel, improving that gravel road through the gracious of Mr. Herrick, that's it.
So my understanding, as John has proposed it, is that the applicant would improve the road up to a gravel road, and agree to maintaining that portion of the road, and that's what we would submit to Attorney Roberts for review, and pending his acceptance of its legality. That would be the action going forward. Is that
But-
correct?
Probably, Joe, up to the, just to put a definite thing, I think up to the proposed cul-de-sac that was drawn up on this map here. I don't know if we got a number on it or not, but.
And if I just might add for clarification, I think this is less about the Merricks being willing to maintain. It's more about that the town is not held liable for any maintenance. I think that's more important as this gets written up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Wittes. That's a good clarification.
Okay, so when I get Rich's response on this, then he should write up the legal language for Mr. Merrick to sign it, to put in the record and in the building permit record. Is that
Yes.
correct? Right?
That
Okay.
would be- that would be a
Okay.
good idea.
And Mr. Merrick, you're willing to sign that? Oh, his speaker's on. Yeah.
Yeah, I sure am.
Okay. All right. Okay. Gloria, you're taking good notes, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
There's a recording.
Okay,
right.
because I'm writing like crazy here, but it's all over the place. So, all right.
Not to beat a dead horse, just make sure it says non-conforming lot too. So,
Yes, good point. Yep, it's a legal non-conforming lot.
Thank you. Both of you. Okay.
Well,
All right.
That was easy.
Thank you all for your very thoughtful and careful consideration on this. This was a complicated one and really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Wittes, and thank you to the Merricks for their patience as well.
Thank you. Are we all set for now?
Yes.
Will I be in touch? Till I'm in touch with you. Yes, we are.
All right. All right. Have a
Thanks
nice
for all
night,
your time.
everybody.
Working
too.
on it.
Item 11C, conservation land donation to Wyndham Land Trust parcel number 1. And first Selectman St. Ange is here to comment on that, I believe.
She told me she was going to.
I see her,
Yeah, she's here.
Oh, she's here. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, so at a previous meeting, Planning and Zoning had approved the disposal of 6 parcels. There was a question on the 7th. And if you recall, this was a recommendation by the Conservation Commission to donate land to the Wyndham Land Trust. These parcels are landlocked parcels, and the last one that we were uncertain about was a 21-acre parcel off of Ravenel Road. Question being that there was a deed restriction that restricted the use of the land because it was meant for the benefit of the poor. When I spoke to our attorney, Ken Slater, he did tell me that that stipulation would carry over to Wyndham Land Trust. Therefore, let's say Wyndham Land Trust decided to harvest timber for profit, any profits that were made on that acreage would have to be donated to a charitable organization within the town of Thompson. So that restriction would still carry over. And the town isn't required to keep the parcel because we're not actually making a profit because it is being donated.
Great. Thank you very much for the clarification. With that understanding that the legality of such a conferral would be appropriate, I would move to recommend the donation of this parcel to the Wyndham Land Trust.
Second.
I'll second a
I think
motion.
Mr. Blackmer beat you, Mr.
Okay,
Wright.
but comments, please.
Yes, motion to discuss or any discussion on the motion. Mr. Rice.
With that going to the poor, I would suggest have it in writing with the land trust in the event they do harvest that for anything that anytime they making money on it, that it would go into the social services account in the town, i.e. being, at this time being Teague that handles the poor. I think that would kind of satisfy the intent. Rather than that money, goes into the general corpus of the town.
Well, I mean, if I were to, if I understand the first selectman, the attorney indicated that that would be a stipulation of the transfer, that it would not go to the town's profit. It would go to organizations that benefit the poor.
I have a question.
Ms. Langlois?
Is there any way to make a separate line item for that so that I know like Teague has their, their line item, their money coming in and going out, and they have their budget set. Like if they were to sell anything and there was a profit, it could get lost in the Teague thing. And let's just say they made $20,000 and no one ever benefited from it in the Teague part because they didn't we have more poor people in town. They don't always fit the Teague criteria, and some people miss it by $50. Well, they're still poor. So I feel like Teague gets a lot of money and they get a lot of donations. And if you're really underneath that guideline, then you get things. But if you're not, then you get no food, no heating assistance. And I think that we need to start taking a look at other people that don't fit in those guidelines and maybe have a separate line item so that maybe you're not poor, but you're $50 short of getting food, oil, water. And I would like a different line item. I just think it's time that we start taking, poor has a different meaning nowadays than Teague.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Langlois.
you.
My understanding, thank you, Ms. Langlois. My understanding is that having conferred the land to the Wyndham Land Trust, it would be, the onus would be on the land trust to distribute those funds to the poor and not the town, because the town no longer has ownership of the land.
And Mr. Chairman, that's correct. And let's be honest, the land trust, technically, once they acquire land, it is in a trust. It is not meant to be sold. Honestly, it's not meant to be timber harvested. They conserve the land. They're stewards of the land. It's meant for that greater good of nature and conservancy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I might even add that the very act of transferring it to the Wyndham Land Trust puts it in the public trust and for public benefit. So I think you could actually make the argument that the very transfer satisfies a certain amount of the intent of the original restriction, which is, that it is not to be charged, not to be profited from. The Wyndham Land Trust does not profit from these properties.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, but where does the poor come into that scenario? In that, if 20 acres, maybe they want to improve that forest, and the way to improve that is by cutting it, not clear cutting, but
Harvesting.
Yeah, but you harvest it, but it's specific.
Select cut.
Select cut is the word. Thank you. I agree, is that it doesn't have to go to Teague, but it has to go in somewhere in the town that's gonna provide it. How do you what organization in town, or department in town, takes care of the poor and identifies the poor.
I think, Mr. Rice, the point that Tira was making was that what the Wyndham Land Trust does is they open up lands for recreational use for every citizen, poor, rich alike. And I think, and maybe I'm misquoting where Tira's coming from, but that would be my take. I mean, they preserve land and property for all people.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's for the public good without cost to usership.
Correct.
So I think you could certainly make the case that the very act of transferring that into an entity, a nonprofit entity like the Wyndham Land Trust for public recreational use provides benefit for all users regardless of income. And if there were, I mean, I suppose if you really wanted to extend it, you could say that if a selected cut or some kind of required clearing, let's say it was riddled with Norway maples and they wanted to remove the exotic invasives, that you could perhaps include a stipulation that any timber or lumber would be, donated to the public good. But I mean, we happen to heat with wood, but how many people really do that? I mean, I think that would be probably would satisfy the letter as well, but would probably be an unnecessary step.
So, and again, as I understand it, the attorney's opinion is that, the transferal will include, the stipulation of the deed as part of the transferal. And, it would be on the Wyndham Land Trust to determine how they follow through on that. Any further discussion? Okay, the motion was made by the chair, seconded by the vice chair to recommend the transferal of this parcel to the Wyndham Land Trust, this parcel 1, as indicated on the materials we received last month as well. So a yes will be to make the recommendation, a no will be to oppose the recommendation. Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hill, yes.
Mr. Hill votes yes. Mr. Lanky.
John B. Linky, yes.
Mr. Lanky votes yes. Mr. Poplawski.
Dave Poplawski, yes.
Mr. Poplawski votes yes. Ms. Chattel.
Oh, yes.
Ms. Chattel votes yes. Ms. Langlois. Ms. Langlois was muted. Ms. Langlois votes yes with a nod of her head. Mr. Santos.
Brian Santos, yes.
Mr. Santos votes yes. Mr. Rice.
Rice, yes.
Mr. Rice votes yes. Mr. Blackmer.
Randy Blackmer, yes.
Mr. Blackmer votes yes. Joseph Perotti Brown, yes. Thank you, Ms. St. Ange. Item 11D, discussion of complaint 1267 Thompson Road.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna have to go from this from memory because I can't find the rest of the end of my memo because it was attached to the memo. I was just going on my other computer to see if I could find it. But in discussion with the Bernardis, they have a vacant apartment, will have a vacant apartment upstairs by the end of February. And their plan is to ask the tenant in the basement apartment that is considered an illegal apartment to move into that apartment upstairs, and they will close that apartment down and not rent it. And that will be done by April 1st because they will need a month to go in and clean that apartment upstairs. And it'll all be completed by April 1st. I told them I would run this by the commission and to see if this was satisfactory with you for a plan to resolve this issue.
Yeah, and these letters are the letter from the ZEO to the Bernardis, and their response is are the last 2 pages of our packet, or I'm sorry, of her memo.
Right, and I don't know what happened to it. I thought it was here, so, but I think I got it all correct.
Yep. Yeah. Well done.
Okay.
Any objection to that resolution as the ZEO has outlined it? Okay. I hear none. Thank you very much.
Okay, I will tell them that that is fine.
Item 12A, yearly election of officers and review of the bylaws. So I guess we will begin with an election of officers. Are there any nominations for the officers of the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Mr. Perotti, Chairman. I nominate Joseph Perotti Brown as Chairman, Randall Blackmer as Vice Chair, and John Rice as the Secretary Treasurer.
Nominations have been heard of Joseph Perotti Brown for Chair, Mr. Blackmer for Vice Chair, Mr. Rice for Secretary. Are there any seconds to those nominations?
Alvin Hill will make second motion.
On all 3 nominations, Mr. Hill?
Yes, correct.
Mr. Hill seconds all 3 nominations. Are there any other nominations for the officers of the Planning and Zoning Commission? Hearing none, I move nominations be closed. A yes vote will close nominations. A no vote will keep nominations open. Mr. Hill.
Alvin Hill, yes.
Alvin Hill, yes. Mr. Lenke.
John B. Lenke, yes.
Mr. Lenke, yes. Mr. Poplawski.
David Poplawski, yes.
Mr. Poplawski, yes. Ms. Langlois.
Colleen Langlois, yes.
Ms. Langlois, yes. Ms. Chattel.
Oh, yes.
Ms. Chattel, yes. Mr. Santos.
Brian Santos, an enthusiastic yes at 9:07.
Mr.
Is that a hint,
Blackmer.
Brian?
Mr. Blackmer, yes. Joseph Perotti Brown, yes. Hearing with nominations closed, without objection, the slate will be elected. Hearing none, the slate is elected. Review of the bylaws.
Mr. Rice was going to be taking care of that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think the idea was that we would all review them and share any thoughts or questions we had before approving them for the next year.
Next month's meeting, right? Is that we discuss it at this month's meeting, Joe, and then we approve it next month.
Yes.
The only suggestion I would have is on Article 11, Section 8.
Yes.
And if everybody doesn't have it, I can read it. This says the show of hands by those present shall not be allowed on any general question presented at a public hearing. The hearing shall be conducted only for the purpose of taking testimony to be considered in deliberation of the regular meeting of the commission. I would like to add the regular and special meeting of the commission. Just in the event we have a special meeting, we should have, I think, that rule for both meetings. Does that sound right, Joe?
Yeah, that's a good point because public hearings do occur at not just regular meetings. Mr. Rice, do you think striking the word regular would be sufficient, or would you prefer to see the regular or special meeting of the commission?
We consider deliberation.
I think leaving both in, doing both doesn't need any further explanation. It's both meetings. Just leave them in.
I agree with Cindy. It's possible there could be ambiguity if it just says meeting, but somebody could come back and say, well, it wasn't at a regular meeting, you know.
Yeah, I think that's
I
fair.
think the specificity removes any ambiguity.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Rice, was that your only suggested change?
Yes, sir.
And were there any other suggested changes from the commission?
Okay.
I think, I don't know if I think I had one like before, like maybe when the people weren't showing up for meetings, like it's hard to, especially when I was an alternate. Like I went to all the meetings just in case I ever had to be seated. And I guess it just makes me uncomfortable. Our alternates now are pretty good at showing up, just knowing that if they ever did have to take a seat and they were never at a meeting, I know they get the minutes and you get the black and white, I get that, but so if I was going to say something, it would have been to make sure that they try to make the meetings. I don't know if you can put like, because we're volunteers, can you say, you know, if you're volunteering, can you at least show up so you know when you have to take a seat, you know what you're talking about? But I really do feel like this group of people has been very active in it, and only if they can't come, they are there. So I guess if the same group of people is still here for the next 6 years, we're great. But I don't know if you want to, I don't know if that can be added in, or if you just have to be grateful we show up for a meeting.
Well, good news, Charlene. You know, if we do this on time this year, we'll review these again in November, and this is the group through November. So
then we're good.
If we want to look at some language, perhaps, and think about how we could, because you know, you know, I think it gets into, like you said, a tricky situation, but maybe between now and November, we can come up with better language to express that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, create a subcommittee for that.
Sounds good, Mr. Nixie. You're the chair of the subcommittee. Any other edits, amendments, or additions? Okay, hearing none, we will put that singular amendment on the agenda to be voted upon at our February meeting.
Oh, Joe, just for the record, when we do redo this or send it out, but we have Gloria somehow just insert that in, somehow in italics probably, so to show that we're adding that, because somebody looking at it, you know, probably go over if it's in the regular type, and then we'll update the date that this has been approved.
John, I think you and I discussed this. I don't think that this is in anybody's programs, because I don't have it. It's all in PDF. So
I was able to find a PDF to Word free converter online,
okay.
Cindy. So if it's a document that does not exist in Word, send it to me and I'll convert it.
Okay, all right, good, because we do have to make that change, and we have to make the approval change in it too. So okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you for that suggestion, Mr. Rice. Thank you for that great teamwork from our crack staff. Item 12B, progress on the division of responsibilities between planning and development and zoning.
Okay, Chair and I went over a few things, and we made some changes to one of the pages to, and I actually wrote it down, but I don't know where I wrote it down at. But it's the page planning and development office. So
Hold
we
on,
made a change.
I'll pull it up. I'll pull it up.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, so we made the changes here. We divided the duties, responsibilities of each department. I've been requested to make further changes under the Planning and Zoning Commission, which would entail adding the duties of the zoning enforcement officer in that section. And so Chair and I will review that and make those necessary changes. or additions to that page. It's the Planning and Zoning Commission page that we're asking changes, that I was asked to make changes to. Is there any questions on that?
Just I can add my comment as usual. It's just
Okay.
that I, as Joe Blow, or whatever you want to say, for out in the town, if I'm looking for planning and zoning, rather than just having, I can't scroll, just that information on it. Tara, if you go back to the planning and development. Now, and under the director, keep going up, I'm sorry. Keep going up on the zoning enforcement officer. All that section there, I'm saying should be, I would advise or recommend that be under planning and zoning. In other words, if I'm looking to do something in zoning, I wouldn't go to planning and development. I would go to planning and zoning. And then I would see all this, that the planning and zoning of the CEO process, all the zoning reviews, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I would suggest to take that out and put that in the planning and zoning section.
I can carry it over. That's not hard to do.
Well,
I mean, you follow me? Is that, like I say, I think anybody looking to do with planning and zoning would go to that webpage, and under the departments, of course, you look in planning and zoning, and all there is showing that Joe is chairman. I just, everybody else, Joe, but you know, so I would take that whole section out and put that under planning and zoning.
okay.
Well, I only made changes today to the planning and development page because that's us, that's staff. So aside from making a couple of very, very minor changes in the membership list to make it more updated, I didn't make any changes to the Planning and Zoning Commission page. So what I would recommend is, and I've heard you on this one, John, so I can take care of that, but that if anybody has recommended changes to the PZC page, to email them to me, because I work out of my email, and that makes a much clearer task for me. It doesn't take me long to make updates, as long as I know what updates it is that you guys want.
Could you go back to that P&Z one for a second? Okay, if you scroll, what did I see? Yeah, do we want to have, how it's indicated your telephone number? Could we have Cindy, and I don't know if we want Gloria's or not.
Well, we don't have a company phone for Gloria. Yes, I can add. I was having a little trouble adding into these two fields, but I'll figure those tomorrow.
All right. I think that's, and all the way down. Go ahead, keep going down, please. I think that was.
I don't think there's anything else down here.
Yeah, I think that was the only thing that I seen on there, the meeting, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
Great. Again, thank you to the CEO and the planner for their work on that. Item 12C, review of September 15th, 2020 amended regulations.
My question, I know it's late, Brian reminded us, it's a very detailed document here. And so I just didn't know how much time you wanted to spend on it, but I do want to mention one thing. I didn't do it under my CEO report because I knew we would be bringing this up, but I have an inquiry on a piece of property in South Shore Road, which is on the border of Webster, and like 20 feet of this guy's property is in Webster. That used to be an R20, and now it's it's a RRAD, which is more intense. He needs more setbacks. It's more intense regulations for him. So he wants to build a small cottage on there. And the visual plans that he's telling me, it fits under the old regulation. So, my recommendation in here was to change that back to R20. And in discussing why it was R20 originally with Tara, it was very interesting because all R20s are water and sewer. And so that's why you didn't keep the R20 up there. That's what she remembers from going through this. But in this particular lot, and I'm just wondering how many other lots that are bordered on Jackson Street, he has written permission from Webster to tie into their public water and sewer. So he wouldn't be dealing with the Northeast District Department of Health on this development of this lot up there. And so I'm wondering if maybe that's why it was R20 years and years and years ago, because they're so close to water and sewer. It's just a thought in my head.
Yeah, as you know, Cindy, I looked at every single parcel in town last week. Which,
yes.
Let me tell you, that was
God.
that was a grand endeavor. There are a surprising number of R20s, not just there, more than I thought.
Okay.
When Donna first raised that issue to me, that the majority of R20s were now RRADs, that couldn't possibly be right. I don't know that it's the majority, but it's certainly more than we thought. But it seems to me that those, just based on what I see, that those parcels were zoned R20 as a way of reducing nonconformities. But if the purpose of the R20 is to accommodate for public utility, then it's not appropriate to zone them that way. It is appropriate to consider them existing non-conforming lots, except if what you just said applies to a group of parcels, or even a single parcel, I suppose, that has the ability to tie into public utilities, even if they happen to be Webster's, if they have some kind of dispensation for that. In that case, I would say those parcels could conceivably be adjusted to be R20s again. But if there's no public utility, it would just be creating a different problem to be we get those complaints about the lake properties all the time, right? The septics aren't this, blah, 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 right? They don't accommodate. That was to reflect the reality of what the water and septic access would be. So it just creates existing non-conforming lots that, are limited in their expansion to what existing non-conforming lots can do. You can always build a house, right? If you can make it work. But the onus is on the property owner to demonstrate that it works.
All right. So in this particular case, I just tell them that you're an existing non-conforming lot, and we go by the setbacks of previous regulations, right?
Of whatever was the case for the non-conforming lot when it was adopted, I guess, right?
Okay. All right.
Or however we've articulated that, whatever the standard is.
Okay.
But if you want to do research to find whether there is a group of parcels that has permission to use Webster's public utilities, that changes the conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he sort of wants a decision on this kind of soon. So, all right.
And to your other point, Cindy, I do think a lot of work went into this from you and Tira and
Donna
as well. And so I do want to give it the attention it deserves. So I think without objection, if we can put it on next month's agenda and make sure it's top of the priority, so we don't bump it off again.
Okay. All right. Well, it'll be old business next month.
That's true.
Go under Brickyard Road.
It is old business A. I'm even pushing it above Brickyard Road. Okay. As long as there's no objection from the commission. And I am not surprised to hear none.
Did everybody read it?
Yes, yeah, several times.
Okay.
Item 12D, update on subdivision regulation subcommittee and affordable housing subcommittee. We got that update from Ms. Pengesic earlier.
Yep.
Nothing more to add there, Tira?
Nothing has changed in the last hour and a half.
It's been a while. Item 13, update on discussion and possible action to adopt the POCD.
So as you guys may recall, this was the new deadline I had set for anybody to provide additional comment before I create a locked draft to post publicly ahead of the public hearing required process. I am posting that locked draft this Friday. I did not receive any additional comments from PZC commissioners. I got a couple of comments from the Board of Selectmen, some from Ken, and Suzanne and I had a conversation today. I've got those notes back on my desk. Rich Roberts did send me some very, very minor comments. Mostly he said it was a surprisingly entertaining read. Yay for entertainment. So I will make whatever minor adjustments are there. If anybody does have anything they want to comment, go ahead and send me an email, but please try to do it in the next 24 hours because, you know, I want to make these revisions once, you know, before I post them again on Friday publicly and not keep going back to it. You know, I think our little bobble at the end of December notwithstanding, we're in good shape now. I don't, you know, we'll have it publicly posted and you know, all of the statutory requirements for public comment and hearing and what have you. I do not anticipate we're going to get a lot of public comment. If we do, it's fine, but I fully expect we'll be able to approve something substantively like what you've already seen on the 4th of March.
Great. Thank you very much, Tira. Any questions for her on that?
Yeah, has that been sent to NECOG?
It has been, that was sent the day we discovered that the clock had to start ticking. So whatever day in December that was.
How about, I'm concerned with my budget, our budget, is that it's gonna be posted in a local newspaper, I assume the Villager, because that's the least expensive.
That would be my preference as well.
So that'll be the complete POCD.
No.
Just the public
It's
hearing.
a legal notice. It's a legal notice of public hearing with directions on how the document can be accessed. So a link or instructions to call. I mean, if somebody calls and asks me to print them out a copy, yes, I will do that.
Well, I thought it has to be printed in the local newspaper. I think that's what that says. In addition to be available at the town clerk's office.
Yeah,
well, there is no local newspaper that's gonna print a 200-page document for us.
Well,
It's a notice of public hearing. That's all.
I think it's just a public hearing.
Clear
John.
instructions.
I have the state statutes right here in front of me. I believe it's just a public hearing. You have to file it in the office of the town clerk. You have to file it on the web page. The commission shall cause to be published in a newspaper having general. Yeah, a notice at less than 2 days. Yeah, it's just like everything else. You know, no more than 15 days and less than 10, whatever those days are. It's just the notice, John.
So how does the people?
Yeah, we have to publish the document.
Yeah, how does the public get to read the document to make comments?
Well, the legal notice will
because
say
it will be published on the website. It will be through the public hearing notice plus whatever press releases, other public announcements we make. Attention will be called to where they can see it. If somebody, you know, says I can't read it online and calls my office and says I need a hard copy, yes, I will print out a hard copy. We don't prefer that, but we can do it. But we will be publishing it on the website.
Okay, that takes care of the people that have a computer. Okay, as long as we're following with that. I just had a hang up. I was concerned that, you know, you're gonna print up in the shopper's guide 120 pages or whatever that is.
The shopper's guide would be ecstatic for that revenue, but I don't think
I know, that's why I was gonna talk to the, you know, up in the budget for printing.
Yeah.
and then the town clerk has to have it too. So they can go to the town clerk's office. So you can even say that in the legal notice that it's available in the town clerk's office.
It's true. If somebody wanted to come in and read it, although that's complicated right now, but yes, I
Right,
think that
right.
is the technical requirement.
Right.
Great. Excellent. Thank you very much. Item 14, commissioners' comments.
Joe, if I may,
Mr. Rice.
that listing, Tara and Cindy, of all those addresses, I got a sheet of paper, I don't know where I got it, probably online somewhere. Of all these addresses that are the old zone, new zone. What is that?
So last week, Paul, the assessor, sent me every parcel in town, so it was 117 pages, to compare the new zoning codes to the new zoning map to confirm that they were correct.
That's what you just.
And I corrected all of them that I could for him, but there were a handful, and that's what this page is, where the new zone indicated does match the map, but I have reason to believe that either it was incorrectly included on the map in the first place, or we looked at it and, you know, didn't look at those parcels close enough. So however many thousands of parcels there are, that page full are the ones that are in some question. Some of them are probably okay, but there are probably some that are not okay as well. The one that comes to mind for me is the Northeast Sand and Gravel site should have been pulled into the Downtown Mill Rehabilitation District, but the access point, the way it looks on the map, you can't really see their drive access, so it looks like it's a parcel behind. We all missed that. I know it's wrong. That one needs to be rezoned, but because it matches the map, it has to be done by action of the commission. So at the next meeting is probably fine. We probably just want to look at that handful and say, is this new
Got some big
district
hands.
code what we want or not?
Did you hear my wife's comment? I said, you got some big hands because it looked like there's at least 30 or 40 parcels here.
Well, whatever. It's one page out of 117. It was.
No,
it was a small amount of total parcels, but there were definitely some that I think need at least a second look.
Tira, in order to facilitate that conversation next month, would you and Cindy, if that's appropriate, be able to sort of categorize those? Like, these are ones I think these have some question. These are definitely a mistake. These are.
Yeah, I can do that, Joe. It's a rum nuisance to go back and forth until he's updated those codes, to go back and forth from the hard copy map to toggling to the website. So it's much more efficient if I do it than if anybody else does it.
Great.
That's going to be a great list in determining the new zones. And I had mentioned that on page 11 on my report when I was writing this report. So
does that mean that we have to redo the zoning map?
If you want to change any, that's why it's going to require action. It's not just like, oh, this was just a mistake in the coding, because the code matches the map. If it needs to be changed, then yes, we would have to have the map updated as well, which probably means I've got to go back to Jim Larkin at NECOG, because I think Carolyn was not fully up to speed on the upgrade to that GIS program that they use at NECOG. But Jim's been actually pretty good at turning those around to me fast.
Thank you.
does anybody want to make any quick comments? I know you passed this, but I know that David had talked about the shooting range earlier. I didn't know if he wanted to wait till next month. Is he still here?
Yeah. I'll wait till next month, Cindy. I had
Okay.
all kinds of questions, horse shelters, stables, location, yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay,
Just a question, I would quickly, because I know of 2 shooting ranges that we have in town now. Would they become a non-conforming use? Before you start making regulations to do these?
well, I don't think you ever had regulations on shooting ranges, have you? And the first time it
I don't
really
think there
came,
were any in the old book.
no, the first time it came up for me was like a month after we passed these regulations
We
and 2
never
people
had,
called
'cause
and complained.
my involvement with shooting
Mm.
ranges is that we never had any complaints, i.e. being, Thompson Rod and Gun, and because they trap shoot in Valley Springs.
Right, this is personal property that people are doing shooting ranges on.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah,
I think some research
there's
has to be.
been more than one inquiry about it, and because there's been more than one inquiry about it recently, you might choose to leave it the way it is, which is that you always have the safety valve language that any use that is considered compatible with the district, the commission may allow under special permit conditions, or you may decide that the conditions, that a shooting range has some very specific hazards to it that may merit separate treatment, just like we do with alcohol sales and strippers. Gun, strippers, and booze. I mean, maybe those are the things that you have your special separations and you keep them in different districts. And I'm not saying you should or shouldn't go either way. You have the ability to handle it now, but it is not as clear as it would be if you chose to define it separately.
Sarah, I know you don't have anything on your plate, but is there anything? Is there anything in the state regs about
Well, that's what I was going to do.
discharging of firearms?
Well, that's what I had said in my memo, that had to be researched, because right now the state police do the
Yeah, but in your memo, all you said is they're responsible about the backstop.
right, exactly. So I said
Good.
further research
they
needs to be
don't
done
care
with state
what-
statutes and determining if a town has the authority to even create and enforce regulations.
Yeah, they
either
don't care where it's located, just as long as you got a good backstop. That's all they're saying.
Yeah, that's what, so that was my next step after that one, is to do the research on that and to see what, so either Chair or I can do it, and
Okay, we can add it to your plate instead of Sarah's.
Ms. Langley.
Dave, you're a hunter, right? There's regulations about how close to a residence you can discharge when hunting, right?
Yes.
I
There
don't know
is.
that either.
Yeah, there is, and that's some of the
500 feet.
Ms. Langley.
Jesus.
I just had a question. We called the police department about shooting ranges and they say they don't, I mean, I guess my first question, a shooting range like Thompson Rod and Gun shooting range or a shooting backdrop, because they don't come to your personal property and look at your backdrop and
Yes, they
say,
do.
he
Yes, they
said he
do.
would not, then he would be responsible if something was to happen. I could say, well, that's where he told me to put it. And then they're responsible for that.
That's what
'Cause
they
we
told
called
me
the
when,
police station.
all right, that's why it needs to be researched, because one hand doesn't know what the other one's doing. Because they told me that's all that they regulate is the backdrop.
I would.
Another issue that came up was somebody actually running it as a business choice, and how that would be permitted. So I think that's where you have more motivation to define it is as a business choice. For personal use, I think it's a grayer area, and maybe the special permit allowances are enough. But yeah, that's something that Cindy and I should probably get on the horn with the state police about.
Well, I did. Actually, I'm going there tomorrow morning, so I'm going to ask again, but we've already verbally called, and then I'll ask them to put it on paper that they will come out and be responsible for a backdrop or wherever. And he said that they would not do that. That's kind of them being responsible if something was to happen. Obviously, like not, you can't do it in a
I know who to
neighborhood.
call.
He said, don't shoot anybody.
I
can
know who
tell
to
you
call.
that.
I know,
How
I
helpful.
know who to, Charlene, I know who to call on Wednesday. Don't even bother asking them. I know who to
No,
call.
I think I need to know for myself too.
Oh,
Just
okay,
I need
fine.
to have somebody say it.
Okay,
So I'll double check. Doesn't hurt to get three different
Okay.
answers.
I look forward to learning all about this in February.
sorry,
And,
Joe, I didn't mean to go off on your agenda.
Any other commissioners' comments?
20
Hearing
minutes
none.
of
Item.
10.
Was that Mr. Blackmore?
I said it's 20 minutes of 10. You want
Yeah,
another comment?
exactly. Item 15, next meeting, Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting, February 22nd, 2021 via Zoom, and the subcommittee meeting for subdivision regulations, January 28th at 7 o'clock via Zoom. Item 16.
Move we adjourn.
Mr.
Bye-bye.
Blackmore moves.
Second.
Ms. Langlois seconds. The meeting is adjourned at 9:41 p.m. Thank you. Have a great night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Gloria, my apologies. I just now realized that the minute